What's up? It's your boy D Change coming at you with another Daily Dave. Today's recommendation is the Jordan Harbinger origin story. So Jordan Harbinger is this podcaster that I listen to quite a bit, and I forget his tagline. It's like I help to interview some of the most not success. I hate to keep saying successful, but it's like deep dives into like the minds of extreme, like people who do extreme things. I'm not doing his podcast service at all. It's funny, I always listen to the show, but I don't know what his opening is. I just, maybe it's because I like to go straight into like the interview, or like I'm like I don't pay attention to a lot of the other stuff. And granted, listening to a podcast at 2x speed does mean I miss a lot of the stuff, but for in terms of like main points, that's like, that's kind of what I do get out of it. And so yeah, usually it's like an interview show between him and a guest, but this time he was interviewed by like his friend on another show, and he explained how he went basically from like a teenager in school doing certain things to more like young adult age. He didn't really go too far into like his podcasting business necessarily. I mean, in a way, maybe he's tired of talking about it, or it was just, I don't know, too close to home currently. But it was super interesting because as a kid, he was interested in human behavior and like what would you call it? Psychology and what's the word he used? But basically, yeah, what I'm trying to say is like social dynamics, I guess. He like noticed really early on that he kind of had a knack for, say, like emotional intelligence, right? And so he noticed that like, oh no, okay, I remember now. So as a kid, he was a rule bender. He was very curious, and he found a way to like not hack into, listen in on people's phone calls by like kind of messing around with call boxes and stuff like that. And he started listening to adults talk to each other on the phone. Very voyeuristic, illegal, but or I'm pretty sure it's illegal. But what he realized was that this was an interesting way to observe adults talk to each other, because he was used to being a kid and his parents talking to him, or adults talking to him a certain way. But in this case, he was like, wow, this is the unfiltered, unfiltered like adult speech with each other. And it was between like a guy who like was having marriage problems with his wife and something like that. And so from that, he realized, oh, these are cues I should pick up on, or this is how people feel about certain things. And so he started using that in his own speech with people. Like the way he would interact with them changed, and they became more like attracted to him, in the sense that like they had an affinity for him, they liked talking to him and stuff like that. So that's how like early on as a child he started kind of building a social network. That led him to joining up with some dudes who were kind of like gray area mob dudes. They're doing some kind of legal stuff, and he was like their IT hacker guy, because he liked internet technology and like just the boom of the information age and stuff like that. And then because of what he was doing, he got approached by like the FBI, and his parents were like pissed. They're like, oh my gosh, what have you been doing? But what they realized was he was talented, so they actually picked him up and they wanted him to like help them out with stuff. Well, he discovered like that there were some dudes who were like straight up pedophiles, because he was pretending to be a little girl, and he started helping the FBI like bust pedophiles. And I'm just like, this is crazy, because like just the range of stuff was super interesting. And eventually he got into like kind of I remember the old company he worked for, and he hosted the podcast for, and it was kind of like a dating, pickup artist psychology type of podcast, and it moved more and more towards what he's doing now. And I think he got tired of that stuff pretty quickly, like most pickup artists do. And so now his whole thing is just uncovering, distilling, etc., the minds of like these highly successful people, etc. And so I just found that really interesting because it reminded me a little bit of, say, the movie Better Luck Tomorrow. And it is AAPI month, so let us celebrate Asian American media. Better Luck Tomorrow. I've talked about it in the past, very briefly, but its premise is like, this is how like the model minority, perfect, nerdy Asian kid is at school, but at the same time, this is the dark life that they could lead. And that reminded me of like, not exactly my life, but lives of people that I was like associated with, you know? Because in that movie, it was like, oh yeah, I got to make sure I study for the SATs. I got to take all the honors classes. Got to get straight A's. Got to take extracurriculars because I got to use that to get into college. Yada yada yada. And well, things go awry, and it's like, so, you know, it becomes a thing about like selling drugs and making a lot of money off of strange things. No one suspects them because they're honor students. And then a murder happens, and it's like, oh my gosh, like how you know, what's going on, you know? And so that stuff didn't really, I didn't really participate in, but I do remember like, you know, having the image of kind of like being goody two shoe kids, but also like, hey, what can we do on the side? You know, what can we do to sell stuff for money? How can we film, you know, very violent looking movies or short films? What kind of games can we play with each other? You know, what are cool places we can hang out with where we can act more like adults, or what kids think adults act like, stuff like that. So it was just really interesting to kind of, I don't know, hear Jordan's like whole, this is what I thought as a kid, this is what I thought was cool. But yeah, it was amazing to hear like how kind of varied his upbringing was, because I don't particularly feel like my upbringing was like super exciting necessarily. But when I do recount a lot of it to people, depending on who they are, like, yeah, they will be like, wow, that's pretty crazy. Like, that's, never would have thought about doing that. But I would say the same thing about other people too. So, it's just, I don't know if it's like grass is greener on the other side type of a situation, or more like, oh, it's so, you know, it's really cool to just listen to other people's like different experiences, right? And kind of soak that in and understand how that makes them, right? So that was pretty cool. That's my recommendation. I would say, you know, give it a listen if you feel like my brief synopsis was interesting. Otherwise, I mean, yeah, there's going to be more stuff out there, you know? And yeah, if you feel like you had either a super boring or super interesting upbringing, or like young adolescence to young adulthood progression, I don't know why I'm saying it this way. You can totally leave a comment and let me know how that was, because I think it's just, I don't know, it's super cool. And sometimes you never like expect some of that stuff from people, right? Like one of my favorite things to tell people is like one of my closest friends. I mean, we grew up together and we had very similar interests. And then we go to college, and he became a huge like party head, and I feel like I might have gotten more nerdy. But we gravitated towards certain like interests a lot, like that were very different from each other, and we doubled down on each of them. But the irony is that like as time went on, like we merged back together, and like if anything, he went from super party hard to like super, how I say domesticated, but like, you know, just like take care of myself, go to bed early, do work, have all my retirement in place. It's fine, you know, like don't, you know, can't do any of that stuff, that crazy stuff that I did in college anymore. Whereas I felt like I've progressed more towards that end of the spectrum, but I've never been super into kind of the party scene and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, I started doing stuff like going to Japan every year, and then like moving to Japan, and I don't know, just like almost living a completely different life while I was in another country versus how I think people would see me here. So that's why sometimes I feel dead inside, because, you know, I I came back and it's like I have to reassume the identity I used to have. No, I was just kidding. I think some people have noticed significant change or maybe progress, I would hope. But other people also realize that I'm still the same person. It's just that I have different experiences now. So it's cool, whatever. Anyway, thanks for listening. I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.